slow today. I'm starting to run out of gas, I think.
2 more weeks.
I know. Okay, are we recording? I didn't see it start. Okay, I think we are recording.
Jackie, do you have the artificial intelligence secretary on?
Yes, AI is on
Thank
Fathom.
you.
You'll see that you should see Fathom Ellis as a participant in there. Let's see. Is it still running? Yeah, it's still running and recording. Okay. Let me just put I am sorry, guys. I'm really running kind of crazy today. Disorganized.
How could that be?
I don't know. I'm just doing way too much. And it's not on me. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome to another session of the Tri-Valley Democratic Club. I want to start just briefly with all of the campaign activities that are happening right now. Obviously, we only have 2 weeks left. It's go time to get out the vote. I've been sending out information, various canvassing opportunities, including locally here with Jean Josie and Eric Swalwell coming up. And it sounds like Congressman Mark DeSaulnier may be joining them. That would be awesome. So canvassing going on. We have canvassing coming up for Valerie Arkin in Pleasanton, as well as Lit Drop in Livermore. Kyoko Takayama is managing all of the volunteers in Livermore. So if you haven't signed up for something, please do so. If you don't know what activities are going on or have missed our MailChimp, check out our website at Tri-Valley Dems, as well as the tvudc.org. We are posting all of our events there. So please get out and do something. And like I said, if you don't know what to do, contact me. Check out our website. There is lots and lots to be done. With that, I'm going to actually bypass the Pledge of Allegiance tonight because I'm having some problems operating my Zoom. I don't want to mess this up. I want to start with our first guest. We are very honored to have Congressman Mark DeSaulnier. He is representing the 10th Congressional District. As you know, that's a lot of Contra Costa County, but we do have some area in Alameda County in Dublin that he represents. He has been labeled as one of the hardest working congressmen in the House, and we are very honored. And I would like to introduce to you the Honorable Mark DeSaulnier. And I'm going to add a spotlight and remove me. And sorry, guys. Sorry, sir. I'm
That's all right.
having a little problems tonight. And the floor is yours, sir. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Jackie. And thanks for what you do and for everybody on tonight, everybody in the Tri-Valley who such a dedicated American citizen and Democrat. So just a little background. I currently serve on 3 committees. Last session, well, when we were in charge, I've served on 4. The 2 that I serve on, my main committees are transportation and infrastructure. I'm now, I think, 6th senior. I'm in my 10th year, but there's been a very large turnover in the House in the 10 years I've been there after following Congressman Miller, who was there for 40 years. And then I'm a senior member of the Educational Labor Committee. On Educational Labor, I was the chair of the Health, Employment, Labor, and Pension Subcommittee. My counterpart in the Senate is Bernie Sanders. So that is all the health, labor laws, retirement laws between employers and employees. So those two, and then Leader Jeffries asked me to serve on the Ethics Committee, which I can't talk about anything we're currently doing because it's quasi judicial, but I can talk about George Santos because he's over, which was surreal going through that. And I'm the senior Democrat in terms of length of time in Congress on the Ethics Committee. Prior in the previous sessions, in addition to Transportation Infrastructure, I served on Oversight, and I was the Vice Chair of the Rules Committee. I hope to go back on the Rules Committee. It's a very powerful committee, and everything in the House has to go through the Rules Committee before it goes on the floor. So it's a lot of work, but you're able to work with colleagues and get more amendments passed in different language in order for to get out of rules. So those are the committees. I think you all know my background. I started on the Concord Planning Commission longer than I care to remember. The Concord Chamber of Commerce asked me to go on that. Then I ran for the city council 2 years later, got elected, served 2 years and 4 months on the city council. Then I was appointed to a vacancy on the Board of Supervisors back when I was a Republican. I was appointed by Pete Wilson. Whenever I say that to a room of young people, half of them are horrified and half of them don't know who the hell Pete Wilson was. Yeah, so I served 4 terms on there, 1 short term from Sonny McPeak, and then 3 full terms that I served in the Assembly for 1 term, 2 terms in the Senate, and then Mr. Miller. So it's coming up on 35 years since the Planning Commission. And I've loved it. It's been fascinating, but not without its challenges. And that's where I'll segue to this election. I don't think any of us have ever seen anything quite like this. I was in Chicago for the convention. I've known Kamala Harris since before she got elected. She started introducing herself in the East Bay when I was a county supervisor and a Democrat by then. And we became friends. We did some really good work in the legislature on opioids. We did quite a bit of work together on that. We got a lot of publicity on it. I've got some great pictures with her. So she was AG and I was in the state Senate. So very excited. I was not happy about how President Biden was treated. But on the other hand, after the second debate, I thought it was clear that he did what was best for the sake of the party and the country. And I was so elated by the momentum with Kamala. Side note, a Chronicle reporter asked me any funny personal stories, and I said I can't tell you funny personal stories. I can think of a few, but I did say offhand, I said, well, I guess I can't call her Cammy anymore. And she goes, can I use that? I said, no, you can't use that. It was just a nickname. So it is sort of strange to be in the position we're in right now with this remarkable opportunity to change American history, as opposed to the person. It's hard for me to believe that he was a Republican nominee once, that he got elected, that we're so close. David Brooks wrote a column yesterday, the day before, is why is this still so close? And I have some opinions, but when you start to talk to people in other parts of the country, in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, and of course in the South, there's a lot going on there. And a lot of it is about change, and a lot of it is about that white men have run this country for, well, except for one exception, they've been president and have been in leadership position, and thank God we're changing. We're more a country of merit now, and here's an extraordinary example to turn the page and do something really profound. I think she will be a great president, but I am discouraged about how close it is, and also I'm a little bit concerned because it looked like Hillary was going to win 8 years ago, and I, like a lot of you, I'm sure all of you, were shocked on election night. So I don't know if you've seen it. The Washington Post has actually been doing, like the New York Times, a compilation of all the polls in breaking them down state by state, but also nationally. And then they sort of overlay the current polls with where we were 8 years ago to sort of give a discount for statistically about where we may be losing things on polling. So I'm very excited. I was sort of thinking the momentum would continue and that she'd be up by more now. But in the blue wall, she's up in all three: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, but not by much. She's in the margin of error. In Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, they're all very competitive. So um, it's with a mixture of excitement for what the future could bring, and anxiety that we're in this position. The House is very tight as well. I just talked to my chief of staff in DC earlier today, and she just said that DCCC's got some new numbers, and they're concerned that we were looking like we would we would pick up 15, 20. The margin right now is 220 to 212 because there's 3 vacancies, but we're 7 short. So we've got to flip those, need to pick up 4. So, and then fill those vacancies. So it's tight, and we've got these astronomical amounts of money going into the campaigns and then being spent in independent expenditures. Citizens United continues to be, in my view, one of the worst Supreme Court decisions in our history, and it's continued. When you hear Elon Musk, we're going to write a check for 75 million. That's just ridiculous. It's abhorrent. So that's who we are. It's just a great opportunity. I would suggest to you, and you probably know this, there are lots of opportunities to help. There are buses going out to Nevada the rest of every weekend, the 2 weekends that are left, from a group of people, including you're probably involved with that, along with people like Rossmore and all the Democratic clubs. I'll be over at Rossmore for a few days of phone banking outside of the state, and the few races we've got. I'll be walking with Josh Harder this weekend, and hopefully with Rudy Salas the following weekend. And in the meantime, I'm walking quite regularly for someone for county supervisor in Contra Costa, my fabulous district director who's on leave of absence right now, so she could focus on that. So I'll stop there. Just one last encapsulation of the 2 years that the Republicans had control of both houses and Trump was president. Their biggest accomplishment was a $1 trillion tax cut that we now know, these years later, was supposed to trickle down, Milton Friedman. And we now know with almost unanimous evaluation from economists that tax decrease went to the top 1%. You have to make over $7.5 million a year, and they received 85–90% of the benefit. When we were in charge of both houses and Joe Biden was in charge, we passed the biggest investment in infrastructure in the history of the country, over $1 trillion when you take the state local match in. We passed $380 billion for the transition to renewable and alternative fuels. I had a very important bill for me, the Clean Corridor Project. Go into that. That's $8 billion for infrastructure. The Chinese are adding 100,000 electric charging stations a month. We have about a little over 200,000 in the United States, and at any given time, 25% of them aren't working. This $380 billion will go towards getting the infrastructure ready. And it's really important here in the Bay Area and the 680 corridor, because as you probably know, we are early adapters and have some of the highest per capita numbers of electric vehicles and fuel cells. And then we dropped the cost of, we finally said that Medicare could negotiate drug prices. It's crazy that the American people ever allowed that. A lot for helping people with obesity problems. One of the 10 drugs was a drug that I happened to save my life. That drug, Veneclex, most of the research was done at taxpayers' account at the National Institutes for Health, the American Cancer Institute. In the United States, when that went out, Johnson & Johnson covered it had it. It cost $500 a day. Australia was $37 a day, and the EU was $90 a day because they negotiated prices. It's now down to $75 a day. So no longer American patients subsidizing lower prices in the rest of the world. So I'll stop there and answer any questions.
I think I saw Ellis's hand up.
Of course.
Of course, thank you so much for showing up here and, spending time with us. There's a critical question going on, and it's in the Middle East. What I see is a coalition of countries: Russia, Iran, China, South Korea, and unfortunately Saudi Arabia. And they're on one side and the West is on the other side, pretty much. And what's going on is Iran does not want to see Trump elected because they hate Trump because he tore up the accords that Obama had worked out with him in 2015. Russia, of course, Putin would love to see Trump elected. Xi is interested in the Straits of Hormuz. 60% of his exports go through the Straits of Hormuz, through the Suez Canal into Europe. He doesn't want to see that disrupted. Also, the oil comes in the opposite direction from both Iran and from Saudi Arabia. So he's interested in no disruption. And it's only a matter of time that the Iranians can't hold off the Houthis, Hezbollah, and what's left of Hamas from attacking. And of course, the question of who's going to be president ends in November. And we seem to be ignoring that in the press. In the press, we're more talking about eating dogs and eating cats than about what's going on in the Middle East. And what's going on in the Middle East is quite serious. Anyway, what's your comment on that? Where do you see the situation in the Mideast going, and what difference would a Harris administration make?
Well, thanks, Ellis. Really important. In previous Congresses, when I was in the Oversight Committee, I was in the subcommittee on national security. That time, Eric was on the Intelligence Committee. I can tell you, he and I sat in the basement of the U.S. Capitol listening to intelligence reports that would, it's more than upsetting about what's happening in the world and what the Russians were doing, particularly with social media, and continue to do, and others as well. So we live in a very, very difficult time. I'm a strong believer in Israel's rights to defend itself, but I was also one of the first, I think, 35 members who called for a ceasefire. I did not sign on to Cori Bush's ceasefire resolution because it didn't even mention what happened October 7th or Hamas. I don't agree with the current government of Israel. I support Israel partially, in no small part, because it's the only functioning democracy in the Middle East. But that doesn't mean I, just like the United States, I don't always support the government. So, having said all of that, it's just very dangerous right now. I was supposed to go this month to the Middle East, and now it's scheduled for February by a group called J Street. If you're familiar with them, they're supporters of Israel, but very progressive. So we've just, my belief is that President Harris would be firm about saying Israel's right to exist is sacrosanct. The people who are responsible for any time breaking that, including October 7th, they've got to be brought to justice. The hostages have to be returned with as few conditions as possible. We have a model that we got the first group of hostages out with Qatar and others, and the Saudis. To be honest, intelligence why October 7th happened. It was no small part because the Saudis were about to, for their own reasons, recognize Israel and its right to exist. And Hamas and Hezbollah in Iran doesn't want that to happen. So I think the good news is that in spite of the horrible destruction and death, we have an opportunity to go back to the two-state solution and have a real long, sustained peace in the Middle East. And I think some of it has to do with the fact that the point you talked about with the Chinese is we continue to transition off of fossil fuel, it creates less leverage in the Middle East. There's still a lot there. The Chinese, as you know, need fossil fuel product, although they're changing as quickly as they can because they're very dependent on external natural resources. We are not as dependent as we once were because of the ingenuity of this country and because California is now over 50% renewables. Now, the rest of the country is a long way behind us. That was a bill that we passed when I was in the legislature to get it to 30%. The investment community actually knows that's a good investment. So that's a complicated answer, but it's very difficult. The other big success.
It's a complicated question. It's been going on for centuries.
Yeah, 3,000 years.
Right.
The other thing I would point out is Ukraine, and it has a relationship to the Middle East and Turkey. There are three major pipelines from Russia where they had these huge assets in fossil fuel. The north one, the Nord Stream, then there's one big one across Turkey and one across Ukraine. Putin is in a position where his capital assets from fossil fuels has dropped dramatically. So they trade in futures in energy, as you may know. So people aren't buying future investments in oil because
not in that company.
yeah. So all of the dynamics around the international relations in the Middle East and around energy is changing dramatically, in my view, for the better. But as you say, Ellis, 3,000 years of fighting isn't easy to change. And, you know, Churchill and others drew the lines post World War I. That region wasn't used to nation states. That was a creation that they still struggle with.
Yeah, you know, like the Hatfields and the McCoys, they forgot what they're fighting about.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's a complicated question, and I appreciate your perspectives.
One of the frustrating things is that people are very binary on it, and it's binary in the sense of what happened with Hamas and Hezbollah. You know, they don't believe in Israel's right to exist. So
Right.
that's not binary.
But it has to do with at what time did you tune in?
But also, I would just say the part that isn't binary is how do you get to peace that protects Israel's right to exist? And I just have a different.
That's the really tough question.
BB.
Beverly, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
I don't know if you've seen the article recently, I think it was yesterday or today, on Jill Stein and her impact in the New York Times, and that's kind of frightening in itself. The other thing I wanted to do is I have a co-advocate with me on the line, and we want to thank your office for all your support for MECFS in the past. You've signed on to several resolutions, to several bills as a co-sponsor, and currently there have been about 30 million people estimated to have long COVID, and about 50% of them have symptoms similar to MECFS. And there's currently a resolution, Treat Long COVID Act, and we hope that your office will look at it and you would consider possibly being a co-sponsor on that also.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
One of the things I have, you know, my areas of jurisdiction, my background are air quality, transportation, education, labor, and health. So as Anna Eshu and I, when we were in the majority, had the two subcommittees of jurisdiction on health, Anna on energy and commerce, and myself on labor. I was everything in employee health relationships, and she was everything else. So we did some really good work. You know, what the United States has at the National Institutes for Health, UCSF is now the second biggest recipient of their grants. The new campus, I mean, it's extraordinary what they're doing. They're about to pass Johns Hopkins. But on COVID, we are so lucky. This is another example of how bad that previous president was. Mouthwash will take care of it. These investments have been incredible, and we have to respect it. Trump tried to cut the budget at the NIH, and a group of us, and I was very involved with this because I started the Cancer Survivor Caucus, Republicans and Democrats, and this is when they had control of both houses. He wanted to cut it by $7 billion. We actually put $7 billion more in. So he lost that within his own party. But long COVID research for this isn't going away. The risk for these kind of pandemics are staying with us. So the United States is in supporting the National Institutes for Health and its partner agencies is really important for long COVID, but also to make sure we are more on top of it the next time there's a pandemic like this.
Thank you.
Alan.
Thanks, Beverly.
Alan, do you want to unmute yourself?
Sure. Okay. Congressman, two questions. You mentioned about the Milton Friedman lower taxes and securities investment. I heard this on a talk show once, and it's so true. Lower taxes do not spur investment. Fear of higher taxes does spur investment. That's why in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, we had the growth that we did because nobody wanted to pay a 70% tax rate. They'd rather reinvest it in the company. They would be richer because the company would be worth more. And my other thing is with voter fraud. You keep hearing this over and over and over again about from the Republicans about voter fraud. And Eric gave an answer once that I really wasn't happy with. The Democrats don't speak about election fraud because they say it'll discourage people from voting. Well, to me, that's ridiculous. Republicans are talking about voter fraud. You would think nobody would vote because they're fear of fraud. And in fact, more people get killed by having appliances fall on them than commit voter fraud. The real fraud is election fraud, the voter ID laws, the gerrymandering, and stuff like that. And why doesn't the Democratic Party get in front on that issue?
Well, I think a lot of us do. How people get information right now, I think, is, it's not the days of Walter Cronkite and trusted local newspapers. So it's so diffused, and we are behind social media and general media. They're doing the same thing. Their algorithms and their advertising rates are tied in real time. And they know that people are more likely to click and purchase product, 40% more likely statistically if you're screaming and yelling that the theater's on fire, to borrow from Louis Brandeis, who, if you remember that quote, he said about First Amendment protection, First Amendment's important, but it doesn't mean you're protected from screaming fire in a crowded theater. So we argue and we spend a lot of money on messaging, but it's very hard to get ahead of people who lie and exaggerate things and do it in a way that's very sophisticated in algorithms. That's why our friends in the business sector want all your private information so that they can tie it in the algorithms, get you to purchase more things. President Obama's first election was the first time we really started using technology, but not in the way that the Republicans are now. So they prime people, they mislead them. Confirmation bias, there's been a lot of good research on that people go back to Fox because they want to be reassured over and over again that these bullshit conspiracies exist. So I think what we have to do is be more aggressive, but be honest about the lying. I think to some degree, and the press does this and drives me crazy, and I've had this argument over the years with Mr. Bornstein at the East Bay Times, they feel that they have to be there's a symmetry between the right and the left, and that they have to present it that way. Well, there isn't. They're lying and cheating, and that's why they have the nominee they have. That's why they have a lot of the people like the Lauren Boeberts and the Marjorie Taylor Greens in Congress. So we have to be more aggressive, I think, and you're right about saying they're lying. They're good cheats, and it's sophisticated. So I absolutely agree with you. We need to be more aggressive, but with that, not to use it as an excuse, but it's hard when the people who oppose you are lying and cheating, and then to some degree, the people who are making money benefit from that and the extremism of it. That's why for somebody like me who likes to be sort of boring and by the facts, I'm glad I live where I do because voters like not boring, but I think they like somebody who presents the facts as they are. Other parts of the country, they don't like that. They want somebody who's screaming and yelling and saying that the Democrats are communists and they're trying to steal a country. And that's what we can see that in what Trump is doing right now, the outrageous things he's saying.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was going to ask a very similar question that you pretty much just kind of answered, but it's in regards to the Russians and misinformation and the destruction of our democracy and tearing down our institutions. Do you have any insight to what these Republicans in the House and Senate are thinking? Because this is their institution too. I mean, if they break it and own it, what are they going to do? Literally just throw away the Constitution? I mean, what is it that do they give you any insight in person of why they're supporting these Russian tactics and or turning a blind eye to it?
Yeah, so the history of this, and we've talked about this before, is the Koch brothers, once they got Citizens United, they were going around the country and getting their people to run in Republican primaries. And they were taking responsible, conservative, and moderate Republicans out of Congress and out of the legislature, too. That's the Jane Mayer writing in Dark Money, and then Oliver writing in the New Yorker. And we become friends, so I talked to her. She's just brilliant. But so they started it, the Heritage Foundation, the Koch brothers, partially because they don't believe in democracy. They believe in republicanism as a reflection of the Federalists who said only white men who own property should vote. They don't really believe in, this is how our parties evolved to being Republicans and Democrats, that average voters have the capacity to be as involved in governing as they do. So when they mislead average voters, their response is, see, we told you they're too stupid. Yeah, we lied to them, but they voted against their own interest. So that's sort of the cynical, they don't believe that average people should vote.
That is jaded.
And they feel like it's okay to mislead them. This isn't the Republican Party I was a member of. It's been hijacked. And then the dynamic that happened with them was you could go into committees for bill markups, and they literally wrote what the talking points were from the Republican side. I'd tease some of my Republican colleagues. I'm like, I don't know why I have to come to committee to listen to the debate. I can go on Heritage and find out what you're going to say. What happened with Trump was then in a Republican primary in a conservative part of the country and in frontline districts frequently, they were afraid of the Heritage folks coming in with Citizens United. I had one colleague who retired and I very well respected. And I said, why are you leaving? He said, well, Mark, I have $1.5 million in my campaign account. Normally that'd be enough for me to get through a primary. But with these guys, they can spend $5-10 million and completely lie about me and I'll lose. So he retired rather than have them. And he was a conservative, but he wasn't a firebrand who would also do whatever. He pushed back when he thought they were wrong. So that's the way this party is. And now the reason why Trump and the Koch network didn't get along was Trump now is as bigger threat in a Republican primary than they are. So they're sort of battling for who can intimidate Republican members of Congress in their primaries. And then when they get to frontline districts, they lie enough and make their candidates be acceptable moderately. But then when they get elected, they don't vote that way.
Thank you. Van?
Yeah, I'm curious about what the federal government can do with regard to combating the red map and, for Citizens United. Is there only choice to, basically load up the Supreme Court, or is there any other actions that the federal government can take to more equitably, locate districts and stop Citizens United?
Yes. So HR 1, when we were in charge 3 years ago, by John Sarbanes, wonderful member who unfortunately is retiring because he's frustrated. He was the lead on this. We spent our time, lots of time. I was a co-author, spent a lot of time with our attorneys making sure that we could pass this bill in the Congress, in both houses, and it would be tested, but there was enough transparency in it that at least you, the voter, and smart nonprofits and partisan consultants could follow the money. Right now, it's hard to do. So unfortunately, we couldn't get that passed when we were in charge and had the White House. So the answer to your question is yes. There are statutory things we could do. It would be better to have there's another thing the Koch brothers did. They didn't just take over the Republican Party in Congress. They really aggressively approached the federal bench. So we are trying to do that to get as many appointments made as possible and confirmed by the Senate. But then, you get the filibuster that's left over from the Civil War, just like in the presidential elections. You get the Electoral College was put in place, in my view, to protect the South and protect slavery. So this is the architecture of this country that continues institutionally to make it difficult. And then when you have a Supreme Court that allows Citizens United, it makes it federal law. That makes it really daunting. But the antidote is local groups working together to say, no, people should get elected based on their merit and their ability to communicate their positions and what their voters believe in. Yeah. So it's scary, I'll tell you. At this point in my life, to think in a little over 2 weeks, 3 weeks, this is going to be a very determinative election, and it's going to be difficult. If we win, the money is that we win the House by a small amount. The Senate's hard, particularly Senator Tester's having a struggle now, but it's possible. The Senate, so I think the money is the House close we get, Senate probably we lose, and then the White House is a toss up. So let's say we win the House, we lose the Senate, and Vice President gets elected. That happens on the first Tuesday in November. We're not sworn in until January. That means there's a lame duck Congress. They're going to be nuts trying to give gifts to the people who supported them, and that's going to be ugly. And then if they're saying the election was stolen and we're in court trying to count ballots, that's where Putin and our adversaries are. That's going to be really quite frightening. So we're working on getting Republicans to say, if you lose, you got to follow what the courts say, for better or worse. We can't be making crap up. I was on the oversight committee when we had Mueller come and Cohen. I sat probably 10 feet from both of them. And what both of them told us was hair-raising in and of itself, the public part of that.
And the final question will go to the Honorable Dean Josie.
Thank you. I really appreciate your perspectives and taking the time to come and talk to us tonight out of your very, very busy schedule, particularly at this time of year. And all the things that you're talking about are frightening. And we're certainly seeing the same thing happening on a much smaller scale, but the same tactics on the local level, which is frustrating for sure, but also equally frightening to me, because the local level is where so many people that become federal legislators start. And I'm seeing people discouraged from even running at the local level, and certainly we aren't seeing the kind of money that we talk about at the federal level. And we're not seeing as much, or if any, foreign interference in some of those races. But the Republicans started the playbook of doing things at the local level by going after school board races in particular. And now it's spilling over into other sorts of local elected county supervisor and city council and things like that. And others have taken up the tactics to, doesn't matter what you say, you can lie and it won't be fact checked, and all of that kind of thing. So with the advent of AI and deep fakes and all of that, it doesn't take as much money to use those tactics at the lower levels. I wondered if you had any comment about, for all the people here that are the front line, going door to door and stumping for candidates all up and down the ballot, how do we combat that going forward? Not specifically for this election, but to keep it so that good people will get into local races and eventually want to be in politics going forward.
All the things that we do in good times, but accelerate them. So go to schools, get young people to be interested in public service, whether it's run for office or be a good citizen. Those are things that ultimately I believe is the antidote, is allowing American voters to know the truth, but to constantly remind them. This is the earlier question, is the other side is lying and cheating, not all the time. But for instance, one of the models, as you alluded to, is they get people to change party affiliations and then run as Democrats in local elections. And I went through this a long time ago, but I voted the way I vote now. And then they try to present themselves. I'll tell you, it's quite scary. My friends in public safety, they're about to try to recall Dinah Becton, who's done a great job. But she's the first woman, first African-American in Contra Costa. And the crime rates generally have gone down. So it's, to your point, what I'm seeing in local government is really, and it has all the marks of a national policy by the Republican Party. In places like California, you can't put a D behind your name and get elected. So they're getting people that they know will give them a vote. And then they're telling people, like school board, people running for school board, things that are not accurate. So I think the antidote to that is we've just got a Democratic clubs, conversations like this, going door to door. And then we've got to be smarter about how we spend our campaign money in between elections, in cultivating good candidates and cultivating people who want to be on a central committee or want to be on a club, and then reaching out to reasonable independents and Republicans and saying, listen, we've got a two-party system. We want two functioning, honest parties. I say that to my colleagues all the time. It's a two-party system. I'm hoping once you get rid of Trump and put heritage in the right box, we'll go back to having a Republican Party that's right of center, pro-business, and then we can have a traditional debate about where the balance is. But right now, it's they've created this super cynical, which has always been part of our politics, that if you're not cheating and lying, you're not smart if you're running for office. And as you say, that drives good people away. I don't want to be part of that. I mean, I'm happy having a debate with somebody who disagrees with me and trying to understand why they do and how I can work with them. Because where they're getting elected, most of the people I work with in the minority who are in the majority, they couldn't get elected in my district and I couldn't get elected in theirs. So how do we get back to that point where people realize and want to run for office and participate, based on the difficult task of being a citizen of the United States of America? And right now, we're at risk. President Biden came and told us at the Democratic caucus when he first got elected that he had gotten phone calls from Putin and Xi that week, and both of them had argued with him that democracy in the modern day was outmoded because it was too easy to manipulate people. And I don't believe that. I believe we're struggling with it right now, but we're going to get ahead of it. I have a bill I'm working on that would do like we do for tobacco for kids when they get on social media. It's a warning. And the Surgeon General, after I started working on it, not because of me, he came out and recommended we do it. So there's a group of us now working on that. So those are the kind of things we are way behind on, is making people aware of the fact that they're being manipulated. And the Mueller report, if you read that, I mean, that tells you what the Russians were doing to get Trump elected. And then Cohen's testimony was inside information. And the fact that, back to the earlier question about us arguing, the fact that that was all public information and still people didn't respond to it, it reminded me of the McCarthy hearings and Watergate, but very different, because I thought any of those hearings would have changed everything. But this is a different time we live in because of how people get information. So we just have to stick at it. Sorry to go on so long, but you all ask good questions.
Not at all.
Thank you
Great.
so much. And I appreciate all this time. Is there anything you want to say to us in your closing comments? There are some other comments in the chat. Feel free to look at those, and I could send these to your campaign if you want to read. There's a question here. Could Biden use his presidential authority to establish a fund citizens commission while he's still in office and has presidential immunity from the Supreme Court? That's one question in the chat.
Yeah.
And then I'll just let you make a closing statement, and anything else you'd like to tell us.
No, I think all of this has been great. I personally think Pickerty's work is illustrative. I mean, he did this very detailed. He knew he was going to be criticized. History of capitalistic democracies and how human nature doesn't like inequality. And right now, there's so much inequality in our whole country, and that's where the money comes from. And apparently, if you have billions of dollars, generally you think you have a direct line to God, because you wouldn't have this money. Not everybody, obviously, but that's where the money's coming from. And this sense of that they know what's best for the country and the rest of us don't, because we didn't make billions of dollars. So I think that's the biggest thing, is what Pickerty said. I said, Bob Reich has written a couple, we all love Bob Reich. But he wrote, it's not his most recent book, but the one just before it, The Loss of the Common Good. And he talks about how all of this has diminished shame, where people could just say, that's shameful, I'm not going to vote for you. And on the other side, the aspiration for our better angels of our nature, as Lincoln said. So I'm hoping that, a month from now, we will have won all three. And then we'll hit the ground running. We'll get HR 1 passed for the question about what can we do that'll pass, we believe will pass the Supreme Court to make elections more transparent and start taking money out of them. And then we'll just keep building on that. And then we've got to do a lot for poor people in middle class. We talk about the middle class, but we don't talk enough about how many people are really struggling to get to the middle class, which ironically, a lot of those people, I was over at the Carpenters Hall today. Gordon and I were in Martinez, and they were talking about how a lot of their members are Trumpers here, because they feel like Democrats don't respond to them. So we've got to be on all of those things. I'll end there. I'm really grateful for all of you, grateful for having me on, grateful for walking precincts and interviewing. And, a lot of you have heard this, but one of my favorite Jack Kennedy quotes in his first inaugural was, and asked not, but he said, very few generations have the honor, I'm paraphrasing now, of defending freedom at its ultimate moment of peril. We thought that was foreign. This election, the next few weeks and the next few months, is about that. This is an honor for us, as much of a struggle as it is, to be able to defend freedom in our lifetimes. So get on a bus to Nevada, or get to those phone banks, and let's do everything we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to remove your spotlight here if I can. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
And Gordon, I will reach out to Nawal and get her some of these door hangers to use.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too.
Our next session, we are going to have a discussion about Measure II, and then we will vote on it. And the way, let me get my document up here. the way I have this outlined is we will have the argument in favor, and we will have an argument against. And then so the opening argument will both be 5 minutes each. And then after the argument for and against, we will do another 5 minutes for rebuttal for each, for and against. And then we will open it up for 10 minutes for members' questions before we turn it over to members to vote. So let me go ahead and spotlight some of our guests. And Jennifer, are you on? Where is Jennifer? Yep, there she is. Let me spotlight you.
No, I was here last week and this is the first time hearing of this format now. So thanks, Jackie, for letting me know. But
Yeah,
since I had an
absolutely.
opportunity to talk about it already. David, why don't you start and I'll go after you?
So you want to go the argument against first? Yeah. Okay.
But you don't need to talk. So
I
David, you
just
go
thought
for it.
since we're usually very informal, but it was requested that I have an argument for and against, so I figured why
Sure,
not?
I mean, I'm happy to talk again. I feel like I already got a chance to because I was here last time, but
Right. But if we don't have you speak again, then there may be members here that are going to vote that haven't heard your presentation. So I wanted to give you equal time again tonight. So actually, Jen, I'm going to start with you first, and you can use the full 5 minutes or not. You don't have to. So if you just go ahead and do your argument for, we'll give you 5 minutes, and then we'll switch over to David.
Sure. Well, hello, everybody again. And again, I don't have a presentation ready to go. This is the first I'm hearing about this format, but excited to be back here again. For those of you that may know me, I'm the former executive director here of the Alameda County Democratic Party and was actually happy to be here with you and Greg Bonato and the whole crew when we helped put Rebecca Bauer-Cahan over the top and got her elected. I also had the honor of working with Congressman Swalwell in his Future 40 GOTV office also at IBEW and helped half time there and half time with the CDP taking back the House. So it was really great being able to talk and see Congressman DeSaulnier talk about the importance of the democratic process up and down the ticket. But I want to highlight something that he said because it really resonated with me. You can have an honest debate, but it needs to be honest. And the facts are funny things. Right. So I'm here on behalf of the Yes on II campaign. And I'll give my spiel. You guys heard this already before. This starts 30 years ago in 1994 with the Eastern Dublin Pacific Plan. The city of Dublin has been trying to build a road, frontage road from East Dublin to connect to Livermore. It's been working with public agencies, including, Alameda County Transportation Authority, LAFCO, City of Livermore. Everyone's been trying to do this for 30 years. And it hasn't happened for a couple of different reasons. The first is there is a portion of land that is not owned by either city. It is a private owner. Actually, funny enough, it's Bing Crosby's son, Harry Crosby, the Crosby property. So it's held through an LLC, but it's a guy named Harry. You can actually see a video of him on our website. So one person. And unfortunately, it is just one as his mother has just passed. But has been working with the city, trying to figure out what to do because he was approached about the land. The second piece that I think is really important for us to talk about is the Dublin Open Space Initiative of 2014. I know a lot of people here were super involved in that. I was sort of in the milieu of it, but wasn't individually very involved, but was obviously aware of it working in the area. As part of that plan, there was very strong strictures against development, specifically housing development, but there was a provision that very specifically stated that 10 years from the adoption of the ordinance, the city of Dublin was supposed to study the frontage road again, and to see if specifically commercial development were required in order to make that happen. And if so, to place a measure on the ballot. And here we are in 2024 with that measure. We don't ask anybody to take our word for it. Anybody can make any sort of claims they want to, but a lot of everything that we're saying actually is backed up, not just by things that we say or things that could be said, but actually are in the public record and in government documents. So I would really strongly encourage everybody to go to keepdublinmoving.com. We actually have a section called the Road to Measure II. Oh, thank you, Jackie. That shows all of these different areas and different sort of timeframes of finally trying to get this frontage road built. So what Measure II will do, if adopted by a majority of Dublin voters, is allow for a trade, a guaranteed now for a potential later. It would allow for a guaranteed donation of the Crosby property, 100 acres that are needed to connect the frontage road between Dublin and Livermore. And in addition, and for that, that's guaranteed. No matter what happens, the worst thing that happens, that the city of Dublin now owns this property, as again, as is required by the Dublin Open Space Initiative. If nothing else happens, then hey, the city of Dublin now owns open space. What may happen, and what the city is hoping will happen, is that in order to be able to finance the construction of the road, again, as required by the Open Space Initiative, there may be limited commercial development, not on that acres, but on 80 acres that are adjacent. All of that potential development, one, doesn't exist yet. So there aren't any specific projects, any specific things that any particular person would want to do is simply a guess. Because nothing has been suggested. There's nothing through the LAFCO process, nothing like that. This would just say, hey, this is the possibility of potential commercial development just on this area. It would still need to go through basically 3 levels of regulatory overview. City of Dublin, because the city of Dublin would then own the land. And then obviously any development would have to go through a regional agency, very specifically LAFCO. And then of course would be subject to the environmental, any CEQA or anything like that. So if there's ever any development in the future, that's the process. What Measure II does is the first step, is just to say, hey, we are in fact doing this 30 years later. We want to make the swap and allow the city of Dublin to potentially move forward with this. This would allow potential, construction of this road, not have to raise any taxes on anybody. That's really tough right now for folks, and make sure that 100 acres, and again, per Measure II, and check our math, because all of this is in the ordinance. Do not take my word for it, and do not take David's word for it. All of our stuff is backed up.
And
It'd be open space only, except for obviously the road.
And I'm going to give you more time here to rebut. So I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm just trying to keep it somewhat.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know how to speak. So cheers
Okay.
for having me.
Okay, and on the rebuttal, David Rounds from Livermore, from Friends of Livermore, will be making the argument against Measure II. And David, you want to unmute yourself?
I think I'm unmuted. So, and I shared with Jennifer not knowing what the format was before I got here. So my 3-hour speech is now, I'll edit it on the fly.
Yeah.
So sounds a little disconnected.
Well, I wanted to make sure that we allowed time for questions, because I think that's where we're
No,
going
I
to
got you.
get
I
the stuff.
understand.
Okay,
I
so
understand.
I apologize. I've been canvassing crazy. This I literally planned this today. Okay, this has been crazy. So David, if you could try to keep your comments to around 5 minutes, we'd appreciate it.
I'll
And
take
please
any
feel free.
time Jennifer has left. So anyway, thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for inviting me to speak on this issue before you decide whether to endorse Measure II. So this is a ballot measure Dublin put on the ballot that gives them permission to develop 80 acres in the space west of Livermore's western boundary. And they need a ballot measure for the same reasons that Jennifer talked about. There was a 2014 initiative that made this protected open space, or extended, actually it created an urban growth boundary. Expanding Dublin Boulevard is going to be about 1.5 miles from the current end of Fallon Road, where Dublin Boulevard is, to North Canyons Parkway in Livermore. 2/3 of that extension, which would serve the area called the Fallon Road East Economic Development Zone, can be built now, whether Dublin needs it to serve this whenever Dublin needs it to serve this development area. There's no initiative required or vote of the people necessary to do that part. Now, Dublin says that they can't do that part because they need to extend Dublin Boulevard all the way to Livermore in order for the Fallon Road East Development Zone to be successful. And, you know, you can make up your own mind about that. Dublin says there's a need to annex 80 acres of the Livermore Manning LLC property in order to pay for the extension. That's not true. Cities have numerous sources of funds to pay to build infrastructure. And yes, one way can be done is income from development along the road. Another way is from development anywhere else in the existing city limits, because the city portion of the cost will come from the general fund. Finally, Dublin's own study shows that once fully developed, which will be about 20 years, the income to Dublin from this 80 acres of land will generate about 1.1 million a year. Certainly not enough to cover the 150 million cost of the entire Dublin Boulevard extension. This is why Dublin Mayor McCorriston voted against putting Measure II on the ballot. The financial analysis was inadequate. So where's the money coming from? It's going to come from where it always comes from. It's going to come from the Alameda County Transportation Commission, the state and federal grants, as well as from regional MTC and local Tri-Valley Transportation Council funds. Basically, that's the same place that Livermore was going to get the 27.5 million it needed to pay for half of the extension. Now, Livermore and Dublin have had a long-term agreement about the extension of Dublin Boulevard, and Livermore was going to pay for half of it. The mayor of Livermore has written a letter to Dublin in July 2020 that said that Livermore will not pay anything for the road. The road will now be, once the election happens and it's annexed, the road will be in Dublin. Makes no sense for Livermore to split the cost with Dublin for a road that's in another city, that's in Dublin. The name of the initiative, Dublin Traffic Relief Clean Air Open Space Preservation Measure, is a little deceptive. I'll leave the traffic relief part aside because I don't have time. The clean air part is a little bit of proselytizing. Dublin's plan is to build large tilt-up warehouses that will be served by a constant stream of big rig trucks. Not sure how that's going to contribute to clean air. And as far as open space preservation, this land is already protected. Measure D protects it from any development at this point. Taking 80 acres away will reduce the amount of open space. So I take exception with that. The Alameda County chapter of the California Civil Grand Jury scored this measure at a 2.1 out of 5, with the following comment. The score was lowered from the maximum of 5 because of the lack of clarity as to what the measure would accomplish, why the measure was needed. There is an implication that a new road, bike lanes, and pedestrian access may occur, but no statement as to whether the city or developer would pay for those improvements. There also is no explanation as to whether there would be financial impacts from the change. The title is misleading. From what is proposed, the title should say, amend the existing open space initiative to allow 80 acres of open space land to be developed, since that is what is proposed. So I find the ballot title confusing. Another concern.
And I'm sorry, David, I think we're just about the 5 minutes there. And I want to go back to Jennifer for a rebuttal, and then we'll come back to you. And then we'll have lots of time with questions, I promise.
Not a problem.
Jennifer, rebuttal.
Well, again, just because you say something doesn't mean it's so. The reason that Measure II is doesn't have specifics on development is because it's actually not a development measure. It is the legally required first step to allow the road to be built with this swap. I find it a little bit challenging, especially with some of the things that folks largely from outside of Dublin are saying about the city of Dublin. And that wrangles me up a little bit. I'd be lying if I said that wasn't true. But at the end of the day, this is step one. If there is going to be any development, well, that's certainly the plan and hope, and this would be the first step that would allow any such development to happen. There is such a significant and overlapping process to approve any potential development, that folks within the regional area would have the opportunity to weigh in at that time, whether it be at the state level, the local level in the city of Dublin, or within LAFCO. And what I would say, or what I would ask folks in the Friends of Livermore are, I would love to actually hear about the meeting that the city of Livermore had earlier this year, potentially placing a ballot measure on the ballot to bring the land into Livermore itself to stop a road being built. The city of Dublin actually showed up. The mayor showed up. Several members of the city council showed up and said, please don't do this. We've been working with the property owner for years. We've been trying to get this done for years. And I'm hearing folks saying, hey, we don't need a road, or we don't need to do this to do a road. It's been 30 years. It's been 30 years, guys. Like, roads shouldn't be this hard to construct. And some of the folks that are pushing the hardest against these also push the hardest against other roads, for example, in Pleasanton, saying the exact same thing that they're saying now, and it didn't happen. And I can understand on an absolute level being concerned. There's no reason you shouldn't be concerned about anything happening in your community, but you don't have to assume. I feel like assuming the worst as though it is going to happen based on step one that is again mandated by the Open Space Initiative to move forward with this road is hyperbolic. And I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's borne out by the facts. So, we really hope that we can see this group of folks join, your local firefighters who are all on board with Measure II, very specific 911 times, sheriffs, the same thing. We have members of the city council, including members that are on this call, that have placed this measure on the ballot for voters to consider, and this body has endorsed them. There are folks within the city who really want to see Eastern Dublin kind of get its fair share. And while I understand folks outside the city of Dublin having concerns that the city of Dublin might have something to do with it, they chose, specifically the city of Livermore chose to stand down and to allow the city of Dublin to move forward. I guess I would ask Mr. Rounds, how would you suggest building the road if we haven't been able to do it for 30 years?
And I'm going to hand that back over to David for rebuttal to that question.
Well, to answer that question, I've already just pointed out that this road is not going to be built by the development. The development will provide some funds, probably about $1 million a year, according to the study by the city. That's not going to build a road. What's going to build a road is the place roads are always built with. They're built with grants. They're built with infrastructure grants from the federal government. They're built from grants from the state government, and they're built from the Alameda County Transportation Commission funds, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission funds, and the Tri-Valley Transportation funds. That's how roads get built. Dublin is choosing to tie building the road to developing some additional commercial property. Measure II said that Dublin can study this. It did not say that Dublin has to build commercial property, add commercial property, and take land out of the open space to build Dublin Boulevard. Everybody wants Dublin Boulevard extended. It's just a matter of how you approach it.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go ahead and for the next 10 minutes, open up the floor for questions from our members. Raise your virtual hand. You have a question for either one of these speakers, and the Honorable Jean Josie.
I have a question. Thank you. Full disclosure for anybody who somehow doesn't know who I am in this particular group of folks. I am on the Dublin City Council. I did vote yes to put this measure on the ballot, not because I am a fan of huge development. In fact, I'm not a fan of huge development. I voted to put this on the ballot so that the citizens of Dublin could tell us, as was discussed in the initiative of 2014, whether they want us to pursue annexing this land into Dublin. I want to correct a couple things that were said. Dublin would not own the land. The land would become in the city of Dublin's boundaries. But my question is for David. You seem to have no problem quoting Dublin council members when it suits you, but but you seem to misrepresent us when it doesn't. One of the things that you said was that the city of Dublin wants to build warehouses here and have trucks coming in and out all of the day and night. In that same meeting that you quoted, also 3 council members, which is a majority, all 3 of whom will still be here regardless of the election, the outcome of the election. All 3 said we are adamantly opposed to distribution warehouses on this land. So I think that I wonder why you are cherry picking which quotes you'll use from within that meeting and which ones you won't in order to misrepresent what the city of Dublin may or may not eventually build on this land. So that's one question. And then I guess my second question is to actually, I'm just gonna leave it there, but there's just a lot of misinformation floating around about what this measure does and does not do. And I would like for us all to stick to facts. Thank you very much.
And I'm fine with that. You know, ultimately, none of us know what Dublin's going to build there because Dublin doesn't build things. Landowners build things and developers build things. So in the study that the city presented to the city staff presented, there was talk about having warehouses and a need for transportation for those warehouses to be able to access the freeways.
A consultant mentioned Amazon warehouses and the city council pushed back hard.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't go to your city council meetings.
No, but you're
But
quoting
I
it.
accept what
So
you
if you're
say,
gonna
but
quote it
yeah.
accurately. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I just quoted the mayor. So, I mean, that's the primary part. And just another part that I find concerning about this, and that we find concerning, is that the Dublin is going to annex this land if they win the election and if they win the lawsuits. And then once that happens, all Dublin has to, and I would disagree with Jennifer on this part, there is not a complicated public process that has to happen after that. LAFCO guidelines are very specific. If a city has a vote of the citizens and a willing landowner, then LAFCO needs nothing else to approve annexing this property. And at that point, the city can, after annexation, can just go right from the annexation to considering development proposals. And the only citizen input will be through comments at the city council meeting or the planning commission. And the city of Dublin knows this to be true. I mean, the Dublin extension is going to be built, whether there's a ballot measure or not. It might not have been built in the last 30 years, but there wasn't a need to build it in the last 30 years. If allowed development along Dublin Boulevard, it's going to increase traffic and air pollution. Annexing this land will cover existing protected open space with commercial industrial development, and it will remove the greenbelt buffer from Livermore. Plus, Dublin doesn't plan to honor the 1,200 feet north of 580 guidelines. In the study, same report that I referenced from the city staff, Dublin is going to allow development, and the initiative allows development north of parts of the 1,200-foot line, as long as the 80 acres is total. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I found that it's interesting that it's different than what the 2014 initiative said.
Was there a question about that? I did have another question. You mentioned the mayor of Livermore has said that they won't pay any for the roadway that is not within the city of Livermore, and that is accurate. Nor would Dublin pay for any roadway that is within the city of Livermore. That was always part of the MOU. So I'm not quite sure why that is part of your argument, but I'll finish my question. Thank you.
Sure, I'm sorry.
The original MOU and the understanding that we are all under is that Dublin would pay for the roadway costs that are within the city of Dublin. Livermore pays for the roadway costs that were within the city of Dublin with city of Livermore, and the two cities would split the costs of any portion of the roadway that is within unincorporated Alameda County. And so if this portion of the roadway were to become within either city's city limits, then that city would be responsible for finding the funding. And so I'm just curious as to where you're getting your information from. And I suspect you're going to say you got it from the letter from Mayor Marchand or from his public statements, but he certainly knows what the terms say.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, the road, the memo of understanding did not assume that the land was going to become annexed completely and it was going to be no longer open space. So kind of the playing field has changed. So, but I agree with what you said. Livermore is not going to pay for the road in Dublin. Dublin's certainly not going to pay for the road if Livermore annexes. And the only time they're going to split the cost is if the land remains open space. That's pretty much the position of the mayor.
If the land, I'm sorry, you misspoke again. The only time we would split the cost is if the land remains within unincorporated Alameda County.
That's what I meant. I'm sorry. I meant unincorporated Alameda County.
Thank you.
So, yeah, no, that was fine. That was fine. I'm concerned about not doing the EIR prior to the election. It seems to us to be a violation of the California Environmental Quality Act. Friends of Livermore and Friends of Mount Diablo are suing to this effect. Unfortunately, that lawsuit won't be heard until actually after the election. So, you know, you had a question.
If I could speak to that, please.
Sure.
Because, I'm sorry, Jackie, is that okay? I can't hear you.
How about I unmute? Go right ahead, because that was a
Thank you.
different subject. So go ahead, you can rebut on that.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm actually so glad that you brought up this lawsuit. I think it's important for everybody to know here that anybody can put up a lawsuit. But actually they tried to get the judge to throw this measure off the ballot. It was denied with one word, denied. Just simply because you put out a lawsuit and drum up the appearance of controversy doesn't mean that it is in fact controversial. The case that they cite is wholly different. They're very specifically citing Friends of Sierra Madre versus California Supreme Court. It's a decision from 2001. We feel that strengthens the position of the property owner because the Friends of Sierra Madre case involved a city council initiated ballot measure to remove 29 properties from the local register of historic landmarks. The city council acknowledged that it would be required to comply with CEQA if the council directly delisted the properties. And in order to avoid the cost of undertaking the environmental review, the city decided to undertake an initiative or referendum that would exempt delisting. In court, the city argued that all of the council-initiated ballot measures were exempt from CEQA under a specific regulation in the CEQA guidelines. And at the time, that regulation read something like the transmittal of proposals to a vote of the people was not a project requiring CEQA review. And it is that the California Supreme Court held did not exempt all council-initiated measures from CEQA review. However, what that did do was specifically talk about what was and what was not covered under CEQA review. So in doing so, the Supreme Court acknowledged that an agency could comply with CEQA in a variety of ways. And in addition, subsequent cases have confirmed that agencies can comply with CEQA, determining the measure initiative is exempt from CEQA review on other grounds. There are a couple of different cases. I would say Chung versus City of Monterey Park, which upheld Monterey Park's determination that a ballot measure didn't commit the agency to a particular plan of action, and there isn't a particular project, and there's not a particular project here. So first of all, again, not a particular project. It doesn't cause a direct physical change or a reasonably foreseeable indirect physical change in the environment. It doesn't authorize any development or change the property's land use designations under the general plan. It simply removes a provision in the general plan that prohibits Dublin City Council from using its discretion to consider future development of the property. So in other words, it restores the discretion to the city so that it can consider future development. And, I think you saw very strong words from a member of the city council that has strictures that she will not allow to be crossed on that development if it's proposed, but nothing specific has been proposed for the property. There's not a thing. So similar to the Chung versus City of Monterey Park case, Measure II doesn't commit the city to any particular plan. So even if there was a quote project under CEQA, the CEQA guidelines exempt actions when there's no possibility that the activity in question could have a significant effect on the environment. This is referred to as a common sense exemption. And for the same reasons, Measure II can't result in a physical change of the environment. So it alone does not authorize development. It simply removes a limitation, and the measure itself is not subject to city's future discretion or CEQA on its own. So I think this is another instance with respect to Mr. Rounds, where saying something because it will sow division does not make that thing true.
Well, two comments there. First, some of you have worked with Stu Fleshman He's the attorney we're using for the lawsuit. And it won't help tonight, but I'd be happy to share with you his brief on the subject. I find it very compelling. Though I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly not as well briefed as Jennifer is. So good job, Jennifer. I do have to hand it to Dublin's legal staff, though. I've never seen this before. It's a creative, highly unusual, and well-parsed phrasing for an action. And by using this framing, Dublin can avoid letting the citizens know that this is just the first step in a process that will lead to significant development of open space. And we believe that that's very disingenuous of Dublin, and we also believe that they're doing it on purpose because they don't want to put a proposal out that will say we're going to develop parts of this 80 acres, and this is how. They want to say we'd like to be able to develop this. Our council or some future council would like to be able to develop it, and we just believe that's not true to the intent of the Environmental Protection Agency and CEQA, and Stu Fleshman agrees with that. So, I mean, that's really, I can't say much else than that.
Dan?
Yeah, let me start off by saying that I'm kind of like some of the things that Friends of Livermore does in the South Livermore area. But my question to you is, do you have any friends that are younger, members of working families, do need a place to live and a place to work within the Tri-Valley area in this open space that you're trying to retain as essentially, a car park or, a garage for vans and things like that? I mean, it's just ridiculous that we put so much obstruction in front of any development in the Tri-Valley area because of this obsession with protecting fallow, cattle feed grounds.
I don't understand the car park part of your question.
Well, there's, on that area, that stretch between Dublin and Livermore, there's the casino parking, and then there's an area that basically houses unlimited number of trailers and the like. And I mean, it's just a trash heap. And that's the kind of land you're trying to protect. And I think we need to look at ways to remove obstruction. I mean, the vice president who's running for president recognizes that there's ways that housing needs to be promoted and jobs and more development need to be promoted to satisfy the needs of younger people. And the folks and Friends of Livermore, I think, are trying to hold on to this image of Livermore that is outdated. That's my perspective on it.
And I understand it. I've heard it before, and I don't necessarily disagree with all of it. We need to be careful. Times are changing, but I also know we have to be vigilant. And if you're not vigilant, there's always pressure to build developments that might or might not be appropriate for the area you're talking about. And I can't speak to the jobs, though I'm not sure how many jobs this thing is supposed to produce. But I know there will be no housing. And that's because it's in the Livermore Airport Flyway, and it would be actually illegal to build housing on any part of the Crosby property. So it's not going to help the housing situation. It might help the job situation. But again, I'm not familiar with how many jobs, if any, this project will eventually develop.
And Jean?
I was actually going to address the car park piece. The trailer land that Van was talking about is actually outside of this property, is on the part that is already actually in the city of Dublin, and that trailer parking lot was not supposed to be there anyway, and it's taken us quite a while to get that off of there. I wanted to also address the CEQA piece, and I know I'm supposed to be asking questions, and you guys can shut me up if you want when I'm actually just talking instead of asking questions. But the CEQA piece, there would be robust CEQA if a development proposal came forward. You don't know me, David. I'm very strongly in favor of CEQA, and actually quite strongly in favor of open space as well. This process doesn't go to me as an either or with Livermore or the ballot initiative. We are working, I personally am working hard to make sure that we will have a parallel process with Livermore where we have a win-win on this property, that we go hand in hand to LAFCO eventually, regardless of what this ballot measure, whether it passes or doesn't pass, that we work together with our partners in Livermore to make sure that we are preserving a very wide open space buffer between the built environments on both sides, Livermore and Dublin. I think that everybody has expressed an interest in that. I think Livermore residents and council has expressed that interest. Dublin staff and council has expressed that interest. And that there's no chance of development happening without robust CEQA process where full comment from all interested parties, including residents of both cities and any other agencies would have input into that. I understand you're concerned about the timing of that input as to whether that happens, that CEQA study happens before the ballot initiative or after. You mentioned our legal counsel. We take advice from our legal counsel, and our legal counsel said, we don't do the CEQA until we know what the development proposal is. And so we couldn't possibly do that CEQA without knowing what exactly was being proposed for development. And at this point, there's no proposal for development. What we heard in the meeting where we put this on the ballot was there would be potential for different kinds of development. And that consultant said something like warehouses, and we all lost our minds a little bit and said, not a chance. So the same way you're saying there's no way there's going to be housing there. There's two reasons there won't be housing there. One, of course, is the airport protection area, and the other is that the vast majority of that land is protected open space, is a mitigation bank for species from development that's already happened. So I know that your group is not saying there's going to be housing there. There's another group that's scaring residents by saying, Dublin just wants to build housing up on that hill. And I appreciate the fact that you haven't done that. So I don't disagree with a lot of what you do. I just want us to make sure that you're advocating for things that are factual of what the measure will do, and let people make their decision based on what's actually fact. So anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. I do actually want to ask a question that I would like to answer, Jackie, that was asked last time about a road that exists in Livermore and why we just can't connect it. That was something we talked about last time. I didn't know, so I went and educated myself. I don't know if that's still a question that people here have, but if so, I'm come back with an answer.
I think that was Van Rainey's question. And his comment was, why can't you just build the road? Why do you have to do all this? So
yeah, so
yeah,
great question. There is a road that exists on the Livermore side that's that goes in a little bit into the property, like building. We want to build a road, or actually the proposal is to build a road from Dublin Boulevard to North Canyon. And somebody, I believe a woman named Christy on the last call, very specifically talked about Collier Canyon in Livermore. And why can't you connect those two? And I was like, oh, that's a great question. Let me ask. It is because of the structure of the road itself that it would not connect well and did not pass review. So actually the agency that reviews all of this is the Tri-Valley Transportation, or Alameda County Transportation Commission. And there's something called the Tri-Valley Master Plan, which all of the communities in the county had input into. And as part of that oversight, again, there's a lot of oversight here, and measure, I would not take any of that away. LAFCO, actually a recent LAFCO meeting in September, this was actually discussed, and a LAFCO rep said, hey, this parallel northern bypass has been part of the overall Tri-Valley plan for years, very specifically because of the contours of the land. So I just wanted to answer that question because I wasn't able to last time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
And
you.
David, do you want to make some additional comments to close us up?
Yeah, I just want to compliment Jennifer. That actually is Croak Road extension on the dead ends just before the casino. That was a crappy road when I was 20. So it certainly couldn't handle any traffic and could require major development. Just as far as wrap up goes, I understand, Josie, the CEQA issue. We know that CEQA has to be done once there's a specific development project proposed. We're just concerned that the city of Dublin, the Dublin residents, are going to be voting on a measure where they don't have any really good input from the measure on the long-term potential impacts that will occur if the land is annexed. Yes, if it gets annexed and there's a development proposal, there'll be CEQA for that. We understand that. But I doubt that most of the Dublin residents actually realize that by voting on this was probably the last time they get to speak on it until there's an actual development proposed. So that's my primary concern here. Thank you.
Okay. And Jennifer, any quick last minute comment?
We're just trying to build a road, man. Like, it's been 30 years. We're trying to build a road. The area has been trying to do this for 30 years. There is an incredible amount of traffic in East Dublin. Or organizations that you trust, individuals that you trust are supporting this. I do want to push back on that we're not being forthcoming, and we aren't the city. The campaign is separate, but we literally hide this all online. Please take a look. Do not take my word for it. Do not take his word for it. We link to government documents. We talk about this being the first step, and that there would be adjacent development on the adjacent 80 acres, and that's in the ballot question. So we really do hope that you will join, public safety providers, members of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party of Alameda County has supported this. The city council members are supporting this, advocates are supporting this, and we would really love to have your support in our growing coalition. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you both. A good discussion. Thank you so much. And I think this time we can actually vote on this. So later tonight, we will give our members in good standing a ballot, and we will vote on this. So thank you both. A good topic. Good discussion. Let me remove your spotlight. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, next up. Oh, that's
Sorry.
I don't know how I had your spotlight.
I'm not doing it, I promise.
No, it's me. Something's wrong with me today. Too much. Okay, our next discussion is we are hearing from a candidate for San Ramon City Council. Chirag, can you raise your virtual hand so I can find you easily? There we go. Let me
clap, I guess.
Yeah, just leave that up there for a second so I can
I don't know how to raise a virtual hand.
try to do a spotlight on you. There we go. Yeah, you have to have your camera.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
welcome, sir. We have a candidate for City Council, San Ramon. I did research and reached out to the other candidate, but he is not a Democrat, so we will not consider anybody that is not a Democrat. So here to tell you about himself and why you should vote for him for San Ramon is and please help me pronounce your name properly. Chirag.
Chirag.
Thank
So,
you, sir.
Small correction, I'm running for the mayor, not a council member. Again, so mayor is at large in city of San Ramon.
Okay. City Council.
So one of the simplest reason to vote for me is to have a new voice, because if you vote for my opponent, he's already a sitting council member in his 4-year term. He's on his second year, he's jumping to run for a mayor. So, and all the sitting council member have endorsed him. So in short, if he wins, he will appoint somebody, and all they're looking is for extra power on the council. Whereas I'm bringing a new voice, and I've kept it very clear in my opening statement as well when we had a debate. The other reason I would say is to vote for me is we have seen the 4 years of deficit in city of San Ramon, and I highly value accountability. I've run startups, I've run businesses, multiple businesses. So I definitely think there's a lot of room of improvement. Today I sent out a news article showing like what kind of spending were happened in the city earlier, which could have given a second thought if that's where we ran into deficit. So some careful spending is very important. And third of my most important agenda is community engagement. So in 2020, I actually helped some students who were doing protest on Fridays for Future to come and speak in the city council meeting. And these kids were between 18 to 20, 17 to 20 years old. They came for 5, 6 city council meetings only to hear it's not an agenda item. They were demanding some action on the climate. I think city should have been given them some response and allowed them to speak up in for the bring it to the agenda. So until they got disappointed and left showing up. So I think community engagement can begin with getting back with those people who speak in the city council meeting. And these are the kind of future leaders where I see we are losing a lot of leadership. If the mayor was running unopposed, that means there's a leadership failure. I would believe so. That's how I consider, because primary job of a leader is to encourage more leaders to join the race. That's my small pitch. And if you want me to continue, I can continue even more.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had myself muted. Okay, we'll just go ahead and open it up to questions. I thought I saw Ellis's hand raised. Ellis?
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to our meeting. We met the other day when the UDC was opening, and we indeed had a conversation. And I
Yes.
asked you a question at that point, and I'm hoping we have a better answer. And the question is, why you? What in your personality, in your background, motivates you to run for public office when so many people don't do that? What is different about your background? What happened to you that made you choose to run for, in this case, for mayor? What is your motivation? What gets you up in the morning?
So my biggest motivation is to encourage leadership within the community. And this is how I brought these kids who were sitting outside for 25 weeks. They were never offered even a glass of water. Never a city council member even bothered to come and show up, talk to them. Not a city staff ever showed up to them. For 24 weeks sitting out in the sun from morning 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. every Friday. So this is where we are disengaging our community, our leadership within our community. Last in 20, I would have ran in 2022, but Sarah Lashenlow, she was a very young kid who wanted to run, and I volunteered for her campaign. I learned a lot from her campaign, by the way. But youth encouragement and leadership is one of the area where I think I would like to give most emphasis on. And why me? One biggest another thing is in my campaigning itself, I'm keeping this very different. I'm telling all my kids, don't go door knock for me. Don't put out flyers. Go on the city council website. Go on the city website. Learn about the city. Come up with the agenda. Today, one kid really came up with a very good small clip. Very short, like last 2 years, unanimously everything is approved. Unanimously. So as per the Brown Act, we shouldn't have a previous arrangement, or the city manager is doing more than perfect job. That's what his conclusion was. So this is how I'm building leadership within the young kids. And this kid is not eligible to vote, by the way. And
Thank you.
this is where I hope it answers.
I have a question for you. What is your biggest or your top priorities if you were elected? What are the issues that drive you?
So first of the top priority is community engagement. Second is the deficit. And third one I'm seeing is economic development. If you see Dorothy Valley, there's no good shopping complexes. So probably Dorothy Station can have a better shopping experience where we can build some economic development. Everybody has to come all the way to Old Sandokan for even basic stuff, or go to Dublin. So we are losing revenue to Dublin as such. Sorry, my Dublin friends.
Thank you. Other questions? Do we have anybody that lives in San Ramon? We have members all over the place, so. And your video froze for a sec. Okay. Well,
I saw Alex on here. She lives in San Ramon. Alex Rubio.
Hey, Alex.
any additional questions? Okay. Any other comments you'd like to make in closing?
Well, I would like everybody who is volunteering to come and talk, or any leadership who needs cross support as well, because I have a good amount of volunteers right now volunteering for me. I have a WhatsApp group of around 200 people where I send out the message which spreads much faster. One more important measure N. So measure N, I wanted to give a little emphasis on measure N, which is I'm running against. I'm saying we should not be asking extra tax. Few points which I thought were important is like one of the video I shared in the community, which was watched by around 10,000 residents, wherein city was not able to, the city council member, there was a person, resident who showed up in the city council meeting. He was talking about 1% sales tax increase and said, last year I collected all my receipt and I had 3,100 sales tax paid. With 1% increase, I'll be paying $31 extra. But the tax rate is going from 8.75 to 9.75. He would be paying at least $300 extra, which is the basic math. And I think our council should know, and they didn't say any single word. They didn't correct him when there was such a big error. I think, and this was the agenda item being discussed at that time. This was a town hall for 1% sales tax increase. So I believe so council is not doing their job representing the residents. And yes, for measure N funding, 80% is coming from developers. 80% of the source is developers, which I've highlighted and given to the news article today.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so
Thank
much. Good luck
Thank you
with your
everyone for giving me
campaign.
an opportunity to speak.
Pardon me?
Thank you everyone for the opportunity you give me here.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I'm going to go ahead and remove your spotlight for a minute and put this back on me. Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to start handing out the ballot to members. I know most of my members, but if I miss somebody, please call out. In order to be endorsed by the Democratic Club, you have to have 60% of members that are going to be in attendance tonight voting in order to receive our endorsement. So bear with me a minute as we hand this out. And I do see somebody on the call, Mark.
Yes.
Says San Ramon, California. You want to introduce yourself real quick? What
Yeah.
Are you a candidate?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm just
Introduce yourself while I'm handing this ballot out to folks.
Right. I think I'm in the San Ramon Valley Dems. Maybe I just attend these, but I may not be a paid member. So I don't think I'd vote.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I'm going to go ahead and go through this. Let's see. Beverly, are you a member?
Yes, but I'm new to the area. I'm only here 2 months, so I'm a little bit concerned about speaking up, or voting on a position that I'm not that aware of, that I'm not that familiar with.
Absolutely. Okay.
But Beverly's a wonderful person. I've known her for a couple of years, and we're thrilled to have her in the area.
Wonderful. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Mark is a co-advocate.
Okay. I think everybody should have their ballot. If I missed anybody, please raise your hand. And again, this is for members who are, you should have received your ballot in the chat. So I texted it in the chat directly to members. There's 2 questions on the ballot. Do you endorse II and do you endorse for the Mayor San Ramon? And while you guys are finishing those ballots, I'm just gonna check the rest of the agenda and actually turn it over to Ellis Goldberg for the political director report. Ellis, are you still on? We may have lost Sharon and Ellis. Are they in the? Okay, let's do this. Alan, let's do the treasurer report. And unmute yourself.
I'm ready to go if Alan isn't.
Oh, did you want to go first, Ellis?
Okay, I'm going to make it real quick.
Okay.
I spoke to one of our members, Jeff Colvin, today, and he has taken a 2-hour course with the Democratic Party so that he could be part of the voter protection hotline. And what this means is if a voter is having a problem with voting, they don't take his absentee ballot or give him a provisional ballot or gets harassed at the voting booth or any kind of irregularity, they have a phone number. And Jackie, can you put this phone number in? And it's a voter protection hotline. And the phone number is 877-321-8683.
I'm sorry, Ellis, I didn't catch it. I was trying to find the actual voter protection post. I was going to share that.
Well, it's called the Voter Protection Hotline, and this is the phone number. And not only for our members, but if you hear about somebody who's having problems with voting on election day or even before that, this is the number to call. Also, it's run by the Democratic Party, so they'll say who the endorsed candidates are. Okay, the number again, 877-321-8683.
877-321-8683.
Correct. So that's my political director's report. Jackie sent out the minutes to the last meeting, and you can have a look at them. But I think that we voted on one thing in that, and that was for the park directors, and we
Linda.
or was it park commissioners? I forget what their title is. And there were 3 candidates for 1 seat. And
East Bay Regional Park.
East Bay Regional Park District. And as it turned out, the winner is Linda DeChambeau. And she is an incumbent. And congratulations to her, not that she's on this line. But that's the only thing substantial that we had in the minutes, aside from Alan's treasurer's report, which he's about to give now. So you'll get the latest from him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ellis.
Am I
And
out?
the treasurer's report.
Hey, this month we had, excuse me, we had income of $175. The credit card fees for that income were $7.21. We made a donation of $500 for the Democratic Central Committee. Also, we had to pay our post office box, which is $141. That means we had a net loss for the month of $473.21. We started out with $2,417.47. We now have $1,944.26. However, there is an outstanding check for $610 for our insurance. For some reason, the Democratic Party doesn't like to cash checks. It just takes them a while to do that. We're up to 107 members. Income for the year were $1,945. Our total expenses for the year is $1,744.49, which means we have a net income year to date of $200.51. I'd like to point out we're getting close to the end of the year, and anything I receive from here on out for new members, I'm going to count for 2025. And we will be getting out a notice to re-up for 2025 after a very successful 2024 election, God willing. Any questions?
Thank you, Alan.
Alan, I have a question. When you said that we contributed $500, you said it was to the Alameda County UDC, and I thought it was to the Tri-Valley UDC.
Was it Jackie? Who? I have it on the check. Tri-Valley.
Yeah. It was Tri-Valley.
Okay.
Okay.
So it was misstated.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it got to the right place. Thanks, Ellis. And in addition to the generous donation from our club, Congressman Eric Swalwell has also pledged $1,000 to be donated to both the Tri-Valley UDC, Hayward UDC, and Fremont UDC. So thank you to Congressman Swalwell and Remedy PAC for everything they do.
I have a little something from the entertainment director.
Go ahead, Ed. Go ahead.
Okay.
Ron.
Actually, I've been sick and in the hospital and homebound for a month. And so with that time, I've actually written, recorded, and on the charts, I have an anti-Trump song that lasts 3 minutes. It makes fun of the way Trump does his little musical stuff and kind of prances around. And if you'd like to hear it, this would be the first public performance of it.
Okay.
Yes,
Can we do this? Can I make my remainder announcements, and I'm going to let you close with that song? And also well, I'll let you go ahead and do the song right after my next announcements. And actually, there was a death from one of our members I need to also close with as well. Just real quick, for some of the, I'm going to be sending this out to our distribution tomorrow, but just a heads up, there's some fabulous activities going on. Citizen Nation is a special screening. It's about civic education, and oh, where's my announcement with that? I lost my announcement as soon as I was going to read it. We're excited to announce a special screening of Citizens Nation, a documentary about state of civics education across the country. It's a 4-series episode being shown nationally on PBS, KQED here locally. It's on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. I will send out this notice. This came by way of Cheryl Cook-Callio, our state coordinator with We the People, and in support by Eric Swalwell, President Nate Miley of the Alameda County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor David Hobart, District 1, Supervisor Lisa Marquez, District 2, Superintendent Elise Castro, Cheryl Cook-Callio, Aisha Knowles, and Jennifer Cole. So look for this very special screening, civic education. It's important to get these kids trained from the get-go. Also upcoming is a joint canvas this Sunday with Congressman Eric Swalwell and Jean Josie in Dublin. They'll be meeting at Shannon Park. Also coming up, a canvas with Charlie Jones, Saturday, October 26th from 10 to 1, again with Congressman Eric Swalwell. And then Eric Swalwell's Remedy PAC is doing another phone bank out of our UDC, and I'll be sending that information. I don't have it in front of me, but I will get it out to all of our members, and all these things are on our website. So back to Ron for some entertainment.
Yes, this song is called Do the Trump. It's a humorous critique of his dancing. And after you get in for about a minute or so, and then we go right for the politics. So this is written and performed by me, and it's a full rock piece band. It's on the regional charts for rock music. It's number 16 in Northern California. And it's also on YouTube under the Ronald Lawrence channel. So we are 2 days into posting, so we don't have any indication, but we're in about 50 to 70,000 hits on it. So this is actually kind of fun, and it seems to be well liked in the area. And it goes like this. This is just the Simple Me version. It's, of course, a 5-piece rock band doing the version that's on 98 different download channels. All of your favorites, iTunes, Amazon, etc. You don't need no lessons, you don't need no blessings. Come and you this dance, just take a chance. You just have to move it and feel free. You just have to groove it and have fun with me. And do the trump, just like the chump. It's easy, you'll see. Just criticize him with me. Put your arms out and clench your fists. Shake them back and forth, then up and down. You're doing the trump, just like the chump. It's easy, you'll see. Much too simple doing the trump. We do the Trump in New York and London too. We do the Trump in LA. All over USA, we do the Trump in China, Russia, Europe, and Asia. Do the Trump all over this great big world. Put your arms out, shake your fists, shake them up and down, and back and forth. You're doing the Trump, just like the chump. People will laugh at the simplicity, doing the Trump. He says he has money, but he never pays. The bankers protect him in many ways. He thinks women love him, but that's not what they say. He teaches them freely and he gets his way. Do the Trump, just like this chump. It's easy, you'll see. Just mock him with me and do the Trump. Although people sue him, it never gets far. His lawyers are smart and ready for war. You ask him questions, he appears not to hear. He rambles instead, lack of answer severe. Put your arms out and clench your fists, shake them back and forth, then up and down. You do the Trump, just like the chump. People will laugh at his stupidity. You're trumping. says he likes the Constitution, but really he wants a substitution. They're not lies, he says he's only pretending, but he looks forward to all the rules ending. They caught with his pants down again and again. That's what they say. Always they say guilty. We do this dance to celebrate our wins. Yes, you can celebrate too. Yes, it's easy. I hope you do. I hope you'll see his fallacy, faults, and stupidity, and do the Trump. Just like the chump. It's easy, you'll see. Just follow me and do the Trump. There you go. A little entertainment, 3 minutes.
Nice job, Ron. Thank you. Great
Okay.
work.
Good meeting. Bye now.
Thank you,
I
Ron.
made the link of this video on the group chat for people to access.
Thank you so much. I
Bye,
just have
everybody.
I just have one last thing to say as we close for tonight. It's with great sadness that we learned of passing of Susanna Chow, who left us at the young age of 48. She's been coming to our meetings. She's been a steadfast, dedicated young person, and she passed
bad.
away from cancer, and it was pretty quick. So with that, I'd like to honor Susanna. Thank you. Go do good. Go work, and let's get this done. I will go ahead and share again all of our events through MailChimp. I will send that out tomorrow. Thank you. And that is the end of our meeting. And I will share with the results of the vote. I'm going to go through them and just make sure everything's closed out. And I will send that announcement tomorrow with the list of all of our, all of our various activities that are happening. I will send that out tomorrow morning, along with the results of tonight's vote. Thank you. Thanks for all you do.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you, Jackie.
Okay, bye now.
Good song, Ron.
Oh, thank you. Glad you liked it.